Peter Mace from the Australian Institute of Export. This afternoon I'm joined by John Kell and Philip Ng from Hunt & Hunt Lawyers. And we're going to be talking about joint ventures. Starting with you, John, when would it be sensible for an Australian company to enter a joint venture with a partner in an overseas market?
There are a number of circumstances that are going to make it advantageous to an Australian exporter to look at a local partner in another jurisdiction. I think from a practical point of view, sometimes the local exporter is going to recognise that they lack local knowledge and expertise, and so they will seek out a local partner who will assist them in doing that. In some cases it won't only be local knowledge, they may need a particular skill or access to a particular resource if they're going to succeed in that jurisdiction, and a local partner may assist them to do that. It's less common now, but in some countries there is a requirement for you to have a local partner before you can actually set up any sort of enterprise. So those are probably the two most common situations.
Thank you. And Philip, are there particular countries where it's more, I guess, normal for Australian companies to go into a joint venture arrangement?
I think in our experience it is more the emerging markets where you would find that, and that in part reflects John's comments about needing local knowledge and therefore being aware of local law, and particularly in countries such as China, where the laws may be unfamiliar for people from Australia or from the United Kingdom. Those kind of arrangements can be useful and very helpful for people looking to enter into a joint venture.
Okay, good. And are there particular, I guess, items or things that should be considered before a company launches into a joint venture with a partner overseas?
Well, I think whenever anyone enters into any long-term contract with another party, I mean, what you're doing is formalising a relationship, and as is the case with every relationship, it's important that people take the time to get to know their partner and get comfortable with the idea that that partner is the right partner for them for that particular joint venture. It's very much about ensuring that your expectations are aligned and that you're really hoping to achieve the same thing.
I guess the amount of trust is very important when entering into an agreement. Well, hopefully the due diligence that you have conducted beforehand is going to make the trust less important. I would say confidence is probably more important than trust. Okay. And should a local exporter have a say in the day-to-day running of a joint venture operation overseas, do you feel?
Again, I think that's going to depend on where you are and what it is that you are contributing to the joint venture arrangement. Where local knowledge is critical to the success of the joint venture in the jurisdiction, then the Australian exporter is probably going to have less say in the day-to-day operations of the enterprise. But there may be certain parts that they may have certain knowledge which is vital to the success of the venture that they want to control or protect. They may have the benefit of being successful in other countries, of being a successful manufacturer, for example, in Australia. And so marketing ideas that they've tried here sharing those marketing ideas with their joint venture partner may assist in that third country.
The exporter may also have a role in selecting key employees or being a consultant, depending on the jurisdiction, and that can be one way of maintaining some level of control in relation to the joint venture.
Very good. So one enters into a joint venture, but often they don't contemplate getting out of it. So what are some of the things that people should consider about? Hopefully it doesn't happen, but if they need to unwind a joint venture or wind it up, what are some of the key considerations the company should look at there, or exporters should look at?
Well, in entering into the agreement, I think it's important for both parties to think about
what might happen when the agreement comes to an end, and also how it comes to an end. In a joint venture, it's often important to have some minimal level of commitment. That might be a period of time, say for example 3 years. It might be by reference to a particular goal, so that both parties will be locked into the joint venture for that period of time. I mean, that's important for both parties, because both parties are making a contribution to the enterprise, and it's not fair to either party if one of them is going to be half-hearted in terms of their contribution, or is going to be thinking, well, I'm only in here for the short term. It then may be that the joint venture achieves particular milestones, at which time the parties want to review their relationship, either with a view to one buying the other out or bringing other people in. But also, it's important for the parties to consider what happens when things go wrong, because unfortunately things will go wrong from time to time, and that should be addressed in their joint venture agreement. If the joint venture doesn't achieve the targets that they agree to set for the joint venture, then there's a question about for how long they're going to be prepared to allow that position to continue.
Good. Philip, anything to add to that?
Really, it's just making sure, again, that the expectations are clear, and that if the intention is to sell the joint venture at the end, that that's provided for in the original agreement.
Okay, good. We talked earlier on about commitment, having an equal commitment. So should that extend to funding as well? Do you think both parties should contribute equal funding to the venture, or will it depend on the circumstance?
It's always going to depend on the circumstance. Probably the simplest kinds of joint ventures are going to be where the parties contribute equally in terms of funding, simply because if I'm contributing a certain amount of money and you're contributing the same amount of money, then we know that it's equal. It becomes more difficult when people make in-kind contributions to the joint venture. Especially if one contributes money and the other contributes in kind, it's important there's an agreement between them that the in kind is equal in value to the money. On another example, if both parties are contributing in kind, they need to be satisfied that their contribution is equal, or if it's not equal, that it's recognised in the joint venture.
And some sort of independent valuation of
yes.
in kind.
Yeah. Well, it's sufficient if there is agreement, but in certain circumstances it may be a good idea to get expert valuation. Yes.
And any other tips for exporters contemplating a joint venture?
Well, we've been talking about the termination of a joint venture and the events that might lead to a joint venture terminating. I think it's very important for the parties to turn their minds to what happens when the joint venture terminates. If I've only contributed cash, then it might be a little bit easier for both parties to go their own way and wind up the joint venture enterprise. If I've contributed in kind, is my in-kind contribution still there? What's going to happen to it? In the course of the joint venture, have we created intellectual property? Who's going to get the benefit of that intellectual property? So, yes, there are things that people need to think about that are sometimes difficult for people to think about, because you're not thinking about the end of a joint venture when you go into it. But it's important to try and address as many possibilities as you can.
And we can't emphasise enough, really, the importance of conducting your due diligence before entering into the agreement and understanding your joint venture partner in that, and that will assist you later on in avoiding later disputes or things that you did not realise at the start.
Excellent. All right, well, John and Philip, thank you very much for sharing your insights today. As we can see, there is a lot to be considered in terms of a joint venture. Obviously, the excitement of moving into a new market often gets people to neglect some of the necessities, so it's very wise again to talk to your lawyer and get some good advice and their support in drawing up a good joint venture agreement if you're contemplating that action. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.